Hi all, I was asked to make a couple of videos about simplifying surds, so hopefully these might help a few of you, particularly when we're simplifying and when there's some fractions. So I've got a couple of different examples. The first one here, what I noticed straight away is the square root sign over the whole fraction. That didn't highlight very well, let me change that. Square root sign over the whole fraction. When I've got that, it's okay to actually break up the square root into two separate parts and have one square root sign for your numerator and one square root sign for your denominator. And the reason I've taken this path in this case is because I have spotted that the square root of 25 actually has an answer. The square root of 25 is equal to 5. So I can treat my two values separately. What I also notice is the square root of 18, it can be simplified. And I know it can be simplified because the square number 9 is a factor of 18. So I'm going to rewrite the square root of 18 as root 9 times 2. And to put in the extra step, I don't normally write this step when I'm doing these problems myself, but to show you what I'm doing, I'm going to break up that 9 times 2 into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. And then the square root of 9 is the one that comes out of the square root sign. This is the one that comes out of the square root sign because it is the one that has an answer. The square root of 9 is equal to 3. The square root of 2, we don't know what that equals, so we just leave it as the square root of 2. Or we can work out what it equals, but only as a decimal approximation. And that would be my final answer. Having a look at the second problem, there's two different ways I can approach this. So I'll show you both ways. The first way, I can just look at this problem as 5 times the square root of 1000 divided by the square root of 5. And in this problem, what I notice straight away is, well, I can simplify the square root of 1000. I can make that 5 times the square root of 100 times by 10, all divided by the square root of 5. And then this is where I break it up into the two parts. I don't show this step when I'm doing my own work, but so you can see it. I can break that up into the square root of 100 times by the square root of 10. And notice that I've got this times sign in here. So once I take the square root of 100, because that has an answer, square root of 100 is just equal to 10. I have now 5 times 10 times the square root of 10. And the reason this one stays in the square root sign is because it doesn't have an answer. This is my surd. This is the one that can't be equated to a whole number. All right, I still have on my denominator a square root 5. So let's do a little bit of tidying up now. And this becomes 5 times 10. They're just normal numbers, so multiply them like normal. And then times by root 10, all divided by root 5. And then I don't need to write this times sign, so I can just write 50 root 10 like that. But like in that first example, the square root of 10 over the square root of 5, I could write that, and I'll put the times sign back in so you can see it, as a singular square root sign. And my purpose for doing this now is I know that 10 divided by 5 is equal to 2. So it becomes 50 times the square root of 2. 10 divided by 5 is just 2. So here's my final answer of 50 root 2. Now I've shown a lot of steps as I've worked through that. I wouldn't show all of these when I was doing it myself, but I just wanted to make sure you could see all of the steps that I took. But I did say I'd show you two ways. So that was where my brain went when I first looked at it. But you don't have to do questions the same way every time. So let's go back to the beginning. And I'm going to actually just split up my whole numbers and then my square root sign. So I've sort of got my whole number sitting out the front by itself. What if we did that, turn it into a single square root right at the beginning? I'm allowed to do this, so the square root of 1000 divided by the square root of 5 is the same as the square root of 1000 divided by 5. And in this case, I can, oops, wrong button there. I can simplify 1000 divided by 5. So it becomes 5 times the square root of 200, because 1000 divided by 5 is 200. And now I can simplify the 200. The largest square number that goes into 200 is 100. So 100 times 2. And then split up my square roots into the square root of 100 times the square root of 2. And then which one of these comes out of the square root sign? The square root of 100 has an answer, so that's the one that I bring out of the square root sign. The square root of 2, it's just a surd. We cannot write that in an easier way without using decimals that go on forever, and as soon as we stop writing those decimals, it's no longer exact. Okay, so then we had our whole number 5. This square root of 100 has become a whole number 10. I multiply those two together, they become the square root of 50. Sorry, not the square root of 50, they just become 50. And then the last value we have there is a root 2. I can put the times sign if I want, but I do not need to do that. That times sign is implied. And we get the same answer in a few less steps. So my point for showing you both ways is you don't have to do it the same way each time. You've got to do it the way that you find most comfortable. And the way that you find most comfortable is usually the way that your brain kind of leads you, depending on which person you are. Thanks for listening.